Well, hey there, freaks. It's your boy Marty Bent here to introduce this week's episode of Tales from the Crypt with Carla Kirk-Cohen, who is the last of the Chaincode Labs Summer residents to come through the studio. This year, we had an incredible conversation. For those of you that don't know, Carla is fascinated and working on the Lightning Network. She was part of the team at the exchange Luno in South Africa. That was the first exchange to implement Lightning Network into their services. She led that initiative, and we talked about it, as well as her experience at the Chaincode Summer residency this summer, her thoughts on Lightning, what needs to be added to Lightning, and her experience growing grapes and making wine in South Africa. This episode of Tales from the Crypt is brought to you by the Cash App. Freaks, if you are in the United States and you have been listening to this podcast for the last year and you have not downloaded the Cash App yet, what the hell are you waiting for? It's the best app in the States that allows you to stack sats. You can sell sats. You can send sats to a personal wallet, or you can send sats from a personal wallet to the app to then do what you see fit with them. Use the code STACKINGSATS. It's one word, STACKINGSATS, upon download if you haven't done so already. And you're going to get $5, and $5 is going to go to Owls Across, a great charity in Chicago doing great work to help young boys and girls develop leadership skills through the sport of lacrosse. So again, use the code STACKINGSATS, download the Cash App, use the code. You got to download, then use the code. You're going to get all that great Bitcoin stuff, and then on top of that, you're going to get the Boost program, where you get your personalized debit card with your hot signature. You turn on your Boost, whether it be Whole Foods, coffee shop, Chick-fil-A, DoorDash, pick your poison. You go, you shop at those merchants, and you save money. So again, use the code STACKINGSATS, get yourself $5, send $5 to Owls, and then start using the Cash App and start stacking sats. Hope you guys enjoy this episode with Carla. I know I certainly did.
Tales from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt, here from the studio for recording number 2 of the day. Sitting down with another, I didn't record with the Chaincode resident earlier today. I recorded with Eric Boskul. You guys have probably heard that by now. But now sitting down with yet another summer resident at Chaincode Labs. I'd like to introduce you freaks to Carla Kirk-Cohen. Carla, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Marty. Thanks for having me. Long time reader of the Bent. Good to be here.
Really?
Yeah, long time.
You just surprised me with that.
Yeah.
I hope...
Had to say something for the podcast.
I hope my dumb words haven't made you dumber.
Never.
Well, how long have you been reading?
Probably about a year and a half.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. When I started kind of digging deep into crypto Twitter, and I was like, yep, let's get on this messy bandwagon, I kind of came across you on Twitter and subscribed to the Bent, and yeah, big fan.
Well, thank you. I think you are officially considered Marty's Bent OG if you've been into it for 18 months at this point. But before you subscribe to the Bent, how did you find Bitcoin? Like, how did you come to get to Chaincode Summer residency and work on Bitcoin and Lightning?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a journey. I studied computer science and economics. I finished up my studies about 2 years ago, and pretty shockingly, I didn't hear much about Bitcoin at all in my computer science years. We have a pretty different structure in South Africa. We have 3-year where you do a double major, and then you do something called an honors. And most people do one honors. I chose to do a year honors in CS and then a year honors in ecos because I couldn't really decide between the two. At the end, I realized economics is a bit of a pseudoscience, so I went the computer science route. But yeah, I was in my economics year, and someone asked me about Bitcoin, and they showed me the white paper that they've been reading. And I was so relieved that he wasn't asking me how to install the printer on his computer because he knew I was a comp sci student. And I read it, and I just finished kind of a security and penetration testing internship. And I was kind of blown away by the security model. I read it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I was like, no, that can't work. That's impossible. And I kind of went through this like denial and acceptance phase, going through the white paper, reading some things online, all that, and kind of cycled through until eventually I was like, oh, damn, this is great. I want to work on this. Got to the end of my year, and I looked around for something to work on that I cared about. Couldn't really find anything. I don't really care about online shopping. I don't really care about investment or risk analysis. But I did find a company called Luno, where I currently work. and it was a Bitcoin first exchange and wallet. So I applied, joined the crypto ops team, and yeah.
So what's it like working at an exchange?
It's pretty cool. I was really fortunate that I got to join at a cool time. So when I joined, we were only supporting Bitcoin and Ethereum. And about 9 months into my time at Luno, I was given the opportunity to choose my own projects. And I said, I want to integrate the Lightning Network. And someone was not paying attention upstairs because they said yes, and they let me forge ahead on it. So a large portion of my time there was running this really cool, fun, production-ready Lightning integration. So I really enjoyed it.
What is it like integrating Lightning in Exchange? What functionalities were you leveraging, or were you just testing stuff?
So we started out with a proof of concept. We had absolutely no idea how the tech worked. We had absolutely no idea if it was safe, if we could use it. So we started out with like a proof of concept web page. So a little page, which with my UX skills, 2 buttons, 1 text box, that was it.
Those are great UX skills.
Yeah.
The less, the better.
No CSS on the page whatsoever. Minimalist and stark. Yep, and we added sends and receives in production. Once we kind of had that running and enabled for internal users, we were kind of playing around with it, putting a bit more money in our nodes, figuring out how we wanted things to go. And then the company decided to add it to the wallet product earlier this year. So we started out adding it to our API so that kind of more advanced users could play around with it. And then to our merchant solutions. So we run one of those merchant solutions where you pay with Bitcoin and immediately trade an exchange into fiat if you choose. So we added to that because I think Lightning solves a lot of the issues that merchants face with Bitcoin payments. And now we're beta testing with users. So it's going to be in the app on the web page, and people can use it as they like.
Hell yeah. Are you the first exchange to be experimenting with it in production?
I think someone else announced recently that they were adding it. It might have been Huddle Huddle that was playing around with it.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Pretty early, I think.
Yeah, but even Huddle Huddle is what a decentralized exchange, so a P2P exchange, excuse me.
Yeah.
So Luno is probably the first centralized exchange to be.
Yeah, I think it's the first, first custodial exchange to be working on it. I don't know of any others. Yeah, but it's kind of the nice thing about being a smaller, less mainstream exchange, I'd say. We focus a lot in like emerging economies. So we're big in South Africa, we're big in Malaysia, we're big in all those places. So because we're kind of small, we still get the chance to move very quickly on new stuff. So we implemented SegWit very quickly. We had SegWit sends going out very quickly. And Lightning is kind of the same thing. You get that advantage because you're still pretty small.
Yeah, more nimble. So let's back up a little bit. Like, how did you come to focus on Lightning in particular? 'Cause that's what you've been working on this summer, and obviously at Luno, that's what you're passionate about. And what was like the course that you took to realize that Lightning was what you wanted to work on?
I think the course to Lightning was very much from once the initial Bitcoin peak subsided, I was kind of sitting, figuring out huddling. And then I was like, like pretty much the only use for Bitcoin right now is trading. And trading is a game we've all played, but it's a very stressful game. And I was kind of looking on Twitter and online and thinking, how can this be used in a different way? And it's also really interesting coming from South Africa, which is a country which is pretty unstable, politically unstable. It's got a really terrible currency. It's right next door to Zimbabwe, so we all kind of really understand the consequences of inflation. But we also have a really unique payment space. Like a large portion of the country is unbanked, so we're pretty good on mobile tech and mobile money. And when I come here and I look around, like I haven't seen a QR code since I got here, and
They're not big over here now.
Yeah, and at home, I make 40 to 50% of my payments with a QR code. It's just on my phone, it's an app, I pay with the QR code, at coffee shop, grocery store, pretty much anywhere now. And that's kind of the way of being that we're used to. So I thought that Lightning and that kind of payment system, it fits really well into the world that I know, even though it doesn't really fit into a more traditionally banked country as much.
Yeah, that's fascinating. How so is that like an M-Pesa-like system that you're using?
It's not so much M-Pesa. We have card to QR, so it's kind of like not Venmo, but like your card is connected to an account and you can just pay there, and then they settle with the merchant. But like they have pretty high fees. So there's a few competitors in the market. I think there's something called SnapScan. There's something called Zapper, and both of them are kind of bank independent. But they became so popular that now the banks in South Africa are coming out with QR code scanners on their apps, which scan all those different companies' kinds of QR codes and integrate with all of them, because it just took off for us.
So the bank's catching up with the startups. So it's like a Cash App like system.
Yeah, kind of like it. The banks don't move as slowly in South Africa as they do here. Surprisingly, when I came here, it was the first time I'd ever seen a check. Yeah, I got this piece of paper, and they were like, "Here's your paycheck," and I was like, "Is this money? What do I do with this thing?"
No, I've had a check delivered to me today, and I had to mobile deposit it, but it was the first time I've deposited a check in quite a while, and it is a very archaic form of money. Yeah,
it's a crazy form of money, and we would never have that at home. Like, people would just go forging checks left, right, and center, be like that Leonardo DiCaprio movie. Like, it's just such a strange thing to see in a first world country, that you still have these crazy old methods, because you haven't really ever had the demand for it, I guess. If you don't need it, you're not going to move as fast. Whereas at home, because we have this crazy different set of needs, the banks move pretty quickly on stuff like that.
What do you mean by different set of needs?
So we have a much more informal economy. We have a lot of people trading on the side of the street. A lot of people don't have formal addresses. They don't have smartphones. So it's a really different set of use cases you're looking at. So we also have like a very big market for sort of mobile card machines which connect to a phone, because people don't have traditional internet connections, down to the point where there's a lot of people in South Africa in the informal economy who trade in airtime. You can send airtime between like numbers on the same network for free.
Airtime?
Like the ability. Oh, yeah, you have unlimited calls in the States. Phone minutes and phone data. So airtime and data. And to make a payment, you just send someone on the same network as you some airtime, because that like almost acts as a currency, because it's easier than sort of whipping out your cash, or most people don't have a card or a bank account. So that's kind of what they go with. Yeah.
And that's, yes, this is what, I don't know if you know Beautyon, but Beautyon and Azteco, which is like a similar concept to that, but with Bitcoin, you can buy minutes using a voucher system and something like that, and top up your card as you would with like minutes on a phone.
Okay, cool.
But it seems like this is a natural use case for something like Lightning, where you can just make quick microtransactions to buy minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think there's a lot of challenges to that. Obviously, like the flip side is we have this payment space, which is really suited to Lightning, but we also don't really have people who are going to be always on, right? The ability to even charge your phone is like sometimes rare for a lot of people in South Africa who live in informal housing. So although it is like a really interesting use case, and it is a space that I think would adopt it pretty quickly, I think there's also a lot of work that needs to be done in the Lightning Network to make it more friendly to lighter clients and to more hands-off use, which is what I think is like a really interesting domain and what I want to work on.
Yeah, so let's jump into it. Like, what are the inefficiencies that you believe exist, and how do you think we could solve them?
One of the biggest issues I'm pretty interested in is the operation of routing nodes in the Lightning Network. So people are kind of looking at this emerging classification where something like your phone, which wouldn't be always on, it's going to run out of battery, it's not going to have data, that would function more as a personal node. You just have like one channel open, you use it occasionally, but you're not really aiming to earn fees or be this big hub or anything like that. And you do that through setting up private channels, so people can't actually route through your channel, which is really useful because your liquidity is only locked up by your own payments. And then that's kind of like the one use case, the personal use case. And on that side of things, they still do need to be able to route payments in the network, so they need knowledge of the network graph. So there's a lot of work to be done there in terms of like optimizing the network graph, reducing the amount of gossip sent over the network, so you don't just like kill someone's phone with network updates as they start up. And then the other thing which I'm really interested in is the running of routing nodes. So if we have all these phones that are kind of like light clients, although they do all their own work and have their own Bitcoin nodes, you need these nodes that are super connected and they have lots of channels and they manage their liquidity and they do all this stuff. And at the moment, it's crazy incentive incompatible. Like I read this article the other day that Alan Big locks up $5 million of Bitcoin for $40 of fees a month.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. And yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to make anyone $5 million of routing fees. If I could, I wouldn't be telling other people how to do it. But I think there's a lot of work you can do in optimizing the ability to run a routing node. So smartly opening and closing channels, rebalancing, automating all of that, and really taking out of the effort side of things. Because if you can kind of like, if you're a hobbyist and you set up a routing node somewhere on an old laptop, you just want it to be able to maintain itself. You don't want to have to constantly go back and fix it up. So I think a lot of work that if we reduce the amount of effort it takes, it reduces the amount of altruism we require. Because you don't really want to be in a stage where the network actually requires people just to be doing this for fun.
Yeah, no, you definitely don't want to be in that stage. You don't want to depend on goodwill of others. You want it to just work incentive-wise. I'm pulling up our routing node now. Shout out to TFTC stacking sats node. We're up to 1.168% of the Lightning Network.
Oh, wow.
So what would you recommend we do as a routing node to be?
As a routing node? Sounds like you're doing okay already. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's that kind of active management of your channels. So if your channels are sitting unbalanced for a long period of time, that means you're missing out on routing in one direction because the funds can only move one way. That's something that I think can be pretty easily automated. More discerning opening and closing of channels. So I think if everyone just opens channels to the Blockstream node or to YALLs, we're going to end up with a pretty ugly looking network. And you don't actually want to be connecting to those nodes because they're not sending payments that much, right? They will tend to have liquidity centered in one place and actually not have balanced channels themselves, unless it's YALLs, which Alex Bosworth keeps pretty tightly balanced and pretty clean. He earns a ton of fees. Yeah.
I think, sorry, I'm hearing some disturbance from the mic. I think you just got to hold it. No, hold your hand up here. Yeah. Okay. I think it's like this is a... Okay. I'm sorry for interrupting you there. But, yeah, so that's like one of the crazy... It's a lot of hands-on processes right now, and that's what pre-interview we were talking about. You've been working on autopilot stuff, trying to make this more automated. And so autopilot, like I've had bad experiences with autopilot where there's open shitty channels with people who would close them pretty quickly after or not respond. So where does autopilot need to get to where it's sort of off and running and it's actually working well?
Yeah, so there's two parts of autopilot, obviously. The opening of channels, which I haven't really been working on that much, and the closing of channels. So like briefly on the opening of channels, I think that you need to open to nodes that are reliably online, because if you've got an offline peer in Lightning, it's a nightmare. They can't update your channel. You can't route anything through it. And when you close, you're going to have this big fun delay because they're probably not online to clear all the HTLCs. So I know that LND is working on like BOS scores, which are node scores which monitor uptime and monitor some of the performance of nodes' other channels through basic probing in the network. And that's how they're currently informing how you open channels. And I think that'll really help for cutting out those bad nodes from the opening process. There's also a ton of stuff that you can do in terms of connecting intelligently. So you want to look at the graph and connect in a way which puts you in the shortest route for a lot of nodes on the network. And you can run some graph level metrics on that and kind of connect in that way. And Brené Pickard is working on a C Lightning plugin, which looks at that. So connecting in a way that puts you like in the thick of it in all of the traffic in the Lightning Network. So that's the opening side of things. The closing side of things is what I'm looking at. I like that it's got kind of a cool economic opportunity cost trade-off vibe to it, that once you have money in a channel, you have the opportunity cost of having that capital locked up. But you also have the cost of closing it with on-chain fee. So when do you kind of make that call? And as a human, you'll like sit with your finger on the button forever and never actually close it because, maybe it'll turn it around, maybe it won't. So yeah, I'm looking at some scoring similar to what BOS scores do, but more specific, because when it's your own channel, you get a lot more information. So the basic metrics are uptime, is your peer around, the success rate you're getting in that channel, so how many payments route through and succeed versus fail, the fees you get, the volumes you move, and then the amount of personal utility you get from it. So if you're actually using that channel a lot for sends from your own node, you don't want to close the channel to your local coffee shop if they actually support Lightning. So you keep that open. And then, yeah, that's what I've been working on this summer. My next steps, it's been, we're sort of establishing the fundamentals now, but next steps will be to kind of play around with those 4 metrics and see how we can optimize them for different kinds of nodes.
Who have you been working on this with primarily?
I've been working on the LND implementations, so I've been getting a lot of mentorship from Johan and Jost, who are 2 LND team members. Been incredibly helpful, had a few calls with them, some chats in the PR, all good stuff. Yeah,
this is actually, I actually haven't had too many people working on Lightning specifically on this podcast. I'm very happy you're here Can you help us sort of discern between C Lightning and LND?
Sure. So there's 3 implementations. There's Async, which is a Scala written implementation with the Eclair mobile wallet. There's LND, which is maintained by the Lightning Labs team. It's written in Golang. And then there's C Lightning, which is maintained by the C Lightning team over at Blockstream. The difference in the implementations, I think LND at present is pushing features out pretty quickly, whereas C Lightning are very concerned with the spec and getting the protocol right, because they're just kind of pushing out Lightning 1.1, which is the newer spec. But all 3 of the implementations work together. They have RFC meetings every week. They only push out a change, well, they only accept a change into the protocol if 2 of the 3 implementations have implemented it and tested compatibility. So, yeah. At the moment, everyone's working together and making amazing progress on the protocol spec and actual implementations.
Like you said, LND is pushing out more features, building faster, if you will. Is there advantages to using one over the other at this particular point in time, or?
I'm pretty biased because I'm a Golang dev, so I kind of went for LND immediately. I did a C coding course in university, and I was so scarred by it, so I didn't even dare look at C Lightning. But I think that LND at the moment is working on a lot of the usability issues in the network, which is pretty cool. So they were the first to implement watchtowers, who are people you can outsource the monitoring in the Lightning Network to. They've got some cool stuff going on with routing in terms of probability-based routing and really like tuning the pathfinding. But I'd say the main difference is that LND is like one Lightning node in a box. It's this big thing, and it's got a great set of features, whereas C Lightning is plugin based. So if you're a coder, you want to play around with your own stuff, you want to maybe write some plugins, C Lightning is like definitely the way for you to go if you do want to have a high degree of customization. Whereas for LND, if you want to just run a node and it works pretty damn well, you go with that. Yeah.
And getting back on the, not getting back on, but you mentioned channel routing like that. So Matt and I, my co-host, we spoke with the team from Noddle that's building that hardware node that connects to Lightning as well. And Michael on that team is experience in traditional telecom and hardware, and he thinks that Lightning needs help with channel routing in particular. They need more eyes on how to make routing more efficient and more straightforward, if you will. So would you agree with that?
I definitely think we can get better. I think it's a really interesting trade-off that Lightning's made, because the big issue we've got with routing is that channels have balances on either side, and if all the balance is on one side, you can't route in that direction. But we don't disclose that when you're routing. So you know how much is in the channel, but you don't know which side it's sitting on. And the reason for that is privacy. So if we all just broadcast the like tiny changes in our channels over time, it's pretty easy for an attacker to decorrelate payments. So to trace one delta throughout the network, say, oh, look, 10 Satoshi went between me and Marty, and then Marty and James OB, and James OB and whoever. And so whoever must have received 10 Satoshis from me. And while I do think we need more eyes on it, I think that's kind of a fundamental trade-off that's being made. I think that a lot of the implementations kind of iteratively route, so they make a few attempts before they try. But this is kind of why I think that the channel maintenance stuff and autopilot stuff is important, because we're not going to reveal those balances anytime soon. It's going to be a huge hit to privacy, and I think lose one of the big value propositions of the Lightning Network. So instead of trying to optimize routing, I mean, if someone knows how, sure, but instead of trying to optimize routing, trying to optimize the underlying network so that it is more favorable for routing, I think there's a lot of quick wins there versus trying to find out a better way to route, which is really, really challenging.
Yeah. So what are the quick wins?
The quick wins is automating rebalancing, I think. I mean, you can rebalance at the moment just by looping a payment back to yourself through the network. It's got a bit of risk attached to it because you have to use zero value invoices. Actually, I don't think you do. I think you can just route payment back to yourself. But it's got a bit of cost. You pay fees. There's some suggestions on the Lightning Network about rebalancing, on the Lightning Network mailer about rebalancing as you route. So if a node hits a channel it needs to route through and it's not balanced, it quickly ad hoc rebalances that channel and then routes on. I think that's pretty interesting because that would lead to a lot of more successful payments. Yeah.
That's so when you said loop, right? That's when you sort of atomic swap sats from one side of the channel to the other.
Okay, no, so you can loop just like through the Lightning Network, right? So if you have a channel that needs incoming capacity, you just loop and receive a payment along that channel. So you loop out on one channel. Loop is a bad word because that's also the name of a atomic swap service.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
So you do a circular route out of one of your channels and in the other one. So the coins just shift in those two channels. So you move it out on one and in on the other. And that's like circular rebalancing. And you just do that by sending a payment to yourself and like figuring out the route manually. And then Loop is a subatomic swap service, which LND offer. And that is an atomic swap, which will rebalance your channel with an on-chain payment.
Do you think you think one is more advantageous than the other, one strategy?
I think that the conditions for circular routing, you need a certain set of conditions to be present, right? So you do need to have more than one channel. If you only have one channel out, you can't loop out because you have everything. Not loop out. You can't circle out because you only have one channel open. You need to be able to find like a nice route back to yourself, and that payment itself might fail, right? Because it's another Lightning Network payment. So I guess that's kind of the trade-off you make. Whereas subatomic swap, it's pretty certain it'll go through, and you're going to rebalance. But if you do try and make a circular payment, that might fail as well because of the same issue. So it's kind of recursively going down that rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Are you optimistic about the current state and future of Lightning? Do you think it will be a successful second layer?
I do. I mean, by virtue of the fact that there's nothing else I think that comes near to it, I don't think anyone's going to come up with some crazy layer 1 scaling solution anytime soon. And I think the network shows a lot of problems. Like it's got hard engineering issues, but it seems to be working. It's, people can make payments. The network is kind of settling a bit. People are putting more and more funds in. And I think the protocol works. I think it's complicated, but I think it's functional. So I got a lot of hope. Yeah,
and you're hoping that more people are using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange soon, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it would be cool. I know it's pretty controversial, payments versus store of value, but
I don't think it is controversial. Why do you think it's controversial?
Well, I think if you fully, if you go fully down the bull run and the bullish view on Bitcoin is that Bitcoin is always going to appreciate. The fiat price is going to move up and down, but in the long run, the value of your Bitcoin is only going to increase. And if you really fundamentally believe that, why would you be spending that on coffee? Because then you're going to end up like Bitcoin pizza guy who paid however much for pizza.
Yeah, I think he wound up spending 20,000 Bitcoin. I think he or was it 10,000 or 20,000? I forget. He bought multiple pieces, but I don't know. It's this weird chicken and egg problem, right? You need to show that the network works as a medium of exchange to sort of entice people to come use it. And I'm a believer that Bitcoin serves all those purposes in one, like a medium of exchange and a store of value. It can be either or depending on your particular situation and time preference. So some people need to spend Bitcoin, right? And making it easier and faster, in my opinion, would definitely lead to more people using it. And we see that with our website, with tftc.io, with our dime bag. People are giving us a dime's worth of Satoshis every day. The amount of invoices created every day has been growing. It seems like more people are experimenting with it. Yeah,
that's pretty exciting. And I think like the big thing that Lightning really has to offer, it's like, why would you be spending your Bitcoin if you don't have to, if you maybe are holding, most people are holding some fiat still. I think that there's a huge privacy gain there, which people don't really talk about as much in that whole trade-off. So it's in the white paper that you want to remove those financial middlemen, and you have all these stories about people, making a payment on Visa, and then next thing they know, they have an advert show up on Instagram for the same product. You do not have privacy with your current way of transacting, and perhaps you will lose a bit of value of your Bitcoin if you do spend it now, but you do gain a lot of privacy, and I think that's really important.
So how's the privacy gained?
Privacy is gained because first of all, no one can see what you're transacting. So all of your sends are anonymous. So the people you send to, if you sort of stick an invoice up on a website, people don't even know who's paying. Everything in the Lightning Network is onion routed. So you can see who sent you a payment, who routed a payment to you, and who it's going to. But you don't know who sent it or who's receiving it. So there's a lot of privacy gains there. And then in terms of on-chain privacy, your net balance is settled on-chain. So you could have made 100 payments, you could have made one payment, and no one can really look at that and say, oh, you spent 0.1 of a Bitcoin. Maybe you spent it on this one, in this one specific place.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and it's something I do believe is underscored as well, is the privacy gains on Lightning. And so do you see more people using it because of privacy or because of the ability to transact in the future?
I would say if they're already using Bitcoin, it would be because of lower fees. But I think it's a bit naive to think that the majority of people are privacy concerned.
You could say that.
Yeah, I'd say that Bitcoiners would use it because of privacy. I think that's definitely a win. But in terms of the general use case, I think that you will get people on because they want to transact with Bitcoin. You know, although if you've got them that far, they might be privacy concerned already. But
well, yeah, and that's a big part of my sort of curiosity of the future of Bitcoin is, do people even fucking care? Like, will they care to transact?
Yeah, don't you feel like a bit of a doomsdayer where you're like, something bad's got to happen? I mean, I feel like it's kind of happening now already if you're looking at the global financial markets. But when you want people to value their privacy, and generally people don't value something till they've lost it. So there's always that trade-off of, we want Bitcoin to succeed, but I do think there's going to have to be some crazy incident, some crazy leak in privacy that really spurs people towards this. Although, I guess it already happened. Yeah.
That's why, like, people don't care. Apathy is Bitcoin's biggest enemy right now.
Yeah.
But cause people don't know they need to care, right?
Yeah. I guess people don't care, but it happened with Facebook. Some people deleted Facebook. It'll happen again with something else, and a little bit too late on my side, but I did it. Some people deleted Facebook, and so I think every time one of these things happen, a few people do realize what's up, do realize that they need their privacy, and kind of like from a technical standpoint, if something happened and everyone was like, right, we need Bitcoin, we'd be like, oh my word, we don't have enough UTXOs, we have so much work to do. So I guess a gradual trickle of people into the Bitcoin ecosystem isn't terrible, as long as it's happening. And I think it is.
I mean, if you look at market cap, it definitely is, right? And I do agree. Like, I think, I don't know if Bitcoin's ready for the masses right now.
No.
From a technical perspective.
No.
When do you think it would be ready, or is needed for it to be ready in that?
I don't know if it'll ever be ready. There's a lot of people in this world. And I guess it's that question of how you see Bitcoin ending up. Is it going to be kind of where it is now, where it's hobbyists isn't the right word, because no hobbyists care about anything as much as Bitcoiners care about Bitcoin. So I would zealots. I would never insult Bitcoiners with the word hobbyists. But yeah, is it going to be a small group of people? Is it going to be something like BitTorrent, where a large group of people use it, but it's not everyone? Or is it going to be like crazy global currency scale? We don't know. I'm kind of for the BitTorrent level. I would think Bitcoin is a success story if we get to that level of usage. And I think technically we could achieve that, especially with something like Lightning, which allows scaling on a layer 2.
So looking beyond Lightning, is there any other layer 2 solution that you're paying attention to or hope somebody would work on?
Not really, to be honest. There's kind of alternate proposals within the Lightning spec, which I think are pretty interesting, but every now and then something else comes up which might be interesting, but then it doesn't really technically work out. So yeah, I won't say bigger blocks because that's a terrible idea, but that's like the only thing that people ever say that would vaguely scale Bitcoin, and it's just a terrible idea.
Yeah, I mean, the trade-offs aren't worth it at that point, right? You destroy the ability to be distributed.
Yeah, I mean, if you want bigger blocks, there are bigger blocks out there. Go use them.
Yeah. No, but it's, again, harping back to the conversation I just had with Eric Voskuhl, he really does a good job of breaking down, like, we want layering, not scalability. Like, Bitcoin is not scalable at the protocol layer. We just have to come to grips with that because of the way the internet works, latency works, bandwidth works. Like, it is not scalable. It can only get to a certain point, and before it loses too much of its distributed nature. So, like, layering on top of it is the way to quote unquote scale in the way most people define it.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think kind of relating to my opinions in the Lightning Network and needing people to be able to run nodes. You also want people to be able to run Bitcoin nodes. And at the moment, we have a lot of public nodes out there, but they also kind of run altruistically. You can run a node which doesn't serve blocks or transactions, but a lot of people do. And, I think if we do kind of start to see some regulatory crackdown, we will see that number decrease because, Bitcoin nodes for broadcasting transactions and blocks, they don't even earn a tiny amount of fees. It's nothing. It's just you want your node because you believe in Bitcoin. So I think making sure that it is as easy as possible to run that node is incredibly important. And big blocks factor into that.
Yeah. No, and I'm actually very optimistic about the recent developments of becoming more efficient and things like Erlay and L2 and stuff like that, making it more efficient to run a node is huge. Like I spoke with Gleb, had the pleasure of sitting down with Gleb last week, and I'm very happy that people like him are working on these problems.
Yeah, there's good stuff happening. It's been such an exciting summer. Like we get to hang out with Gleb at lunch every day, and Taj has been in town. He's working on UTXO. Obviously, that fits in really well with what James O'Byrne's doing with Assume UTXO. So it's all happening, slowly but surely. Bitcoin Core is, I think, going to see some crazy good improvements in the next year or two.
Yeah. Do you think we're getting to a point? I mean, that's the other thing. Like, I think Bitcoin can be successful into perpetuity in its current form, but I'm also a believer there's a couple nice to haves out there that would get it to a point where it's ironclad almost. Do you agree with that in any way, or? Oh,
I mean, I don't think anything's ironclad, right? That's the whole security thing. You don't know what your security flaws are until you're hacked. In terms of, I guess, like it's a more general question of Bitcoin Core stagnation, because I know that is kind of a view that's out there that some people would like to see the code stop changing and just kind of be like, right, this is Bitcoin, we're done. I don't think we're there yet. I would be surprised if we ever get there, just from like a software engineering perspective. Nothing's ever done, right? Yeah. Nothing's ever done. And I think there's like great improvements coming up, like Taproot Schnorr, obviously everyone's super excited about. And even if we're not changing consensus code or soft forking, like just the kind of optimizations we can do on the peer-to-peer layer, making sure we're DOS resistant, like just always improving privacy and security. Like there's endless work to be done, really.
Yeah, and I think the recent Erebus attack that was made apparent to everybody is a great example of that. Something that was just discovered, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, even more recently than that, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Speaking with Gleb, he's also working on fixing that as well. How smart is that dude?
Oh, Gleb's the best. I love it. Gleb is like one of the smartest guys at Chaincode. But he's also like, I have like Gleb roulette, Gleb bingo, when I see Gleb sleeping in different places in the offices. He's like a serial napper. He's like asleep on every single couch. I love it because he gets so much done. So he works hard, then he naps hard as well.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, that's the way to live. He's got it.
He deserves some naps.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like the environment of being part of like this residency and sort of the vibe of building and learning with this group that you've been together with for what now?
3 months now.
3 months, yeah, 12 weeks.
It's crazy. Like the disbelief that this is where I am actually only like faded about a week ago, and now we all have to go home in a week. Like you met some of the resis. They're just like the crazy smartest people, and they all have such different backgrounds. And then on top of that, you get to hang out with all the chain coders and just work on whatever you think is important. And I don't think that a lot of people ever get that opportunity to be sponsored in New York and hang out and work on Bitcoin, like, or Lightning if you choose. It's just been a game changer for me. It's been an incredible experience.
It's a great way to learn too, right? Just bouncing ideas off of very smart people.
Yeah. Like some of the most learnings I've got about Bitcoin are like around the lunch table, just listening to the core contributors discussing things that they've been working on. You just pick up so much information just by being there. Is
there any sort of misconceptions that you had that are now sort of cleared up in your mind after about the core process and how it works, or any particular part of core?
I don't think about the process because I was just like, oh, it just kind of magically works. I never really thought about it that much. But definitely interesting to like to get down into the daily operations of how these contributors work. So I hadn't really engaged in any of the IRC conversations before that. I feel like in Bitcoin, there's always more information and you just need to know where it is. So like John Newberry runs a core PR review club. Yes.
Check it out.
Every
Wednesday?
Shout out.
Every Wednesday?
Every Wednesday at 5 o'clock UTC.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I didn't know that existed. And you just get to listen to people discuss the recent PRs on core. And
you get to read people discussing.
Yeah, exactly. And like just all these resources that I didn't know were there, like the weekly core devs meeting. So definitely getting to know the day of a core dev has been super interesting.
Do you find that Bitcoin development's more approachable after seeing how it works sort of firsthand and as intensely as you have this summer?
Yeah, definitely more approachable. I mean, I think everyone was always pretty approachable. I've never really reached out and had a genuine question and had anyone, give me bat in this community at all. People are so nice and so kind and so patient that they really just like have always been willing to help. But it's definitely been great to kind of meet a lot of the chain coders and the contributors and put faces to the famous names. Because coming from South Africa, you see all these people on Twitter and you're like, oh my word, they're famous. They're like these superstars. And, at least in the States, you get to meet them every now and again. So coming here was like really like humanizing and amazing for me to meet all these people.
Yeah, we are very spoiled here in New York City. I'm very lucky. Very lucky. Happy to be here. What is the Bitcoin scene like in South Africa?
Oh.
Is it big down there or no? It's
really interesting. South Africa's actually got like the highest Bitcoin, cryptocurrency penetration in the world.
Is it all Monero?
I don't know. Would we know if it was all Monero?
Maybe not.
Yeah.
No, probably not.
But like there's some like database, survey-based study out there. South Africa's got, of all the internet users in South Africa, 10% of them hold crypto. And that's like the highest in the world. The world average is like 5.5%. But I will say that I don't think the dev community is very big there. So Luno runs some meetups every now and again. And you won't be so lucky as you are here to go to an event like BitDevs where it's just Bitcoin developers. Like there'll always be blockchainers or F-heads or something like that at the Bitcoin meetup because it's just a small place, right? There are more people in New York than there are in the country of South Africa. So there's just not enough people to have that kind of community.
Why do you think there's such high penetration of Bitcoin ownership or crypto ownership?
I don't know. I mean, it can't just be that South Africans are crazy traders. That's kind of the one thing you can think about. But I was looking at that graph recently, and if you look at the top, it's like South Africa, Thailand, Brazil, Colombia. So all countries that aren't kind of traditionally first world, they're all emerging markets. And like the bull in me is like, it's because Bitcoin's working, right? Mm-hmm. It's got to be. I like this is a survey-based data, so it's like just people ticking things on a form. But I'm like, it feels like it's working. It feels like it's happening a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely happening.
Yeah. So like when moon, I don't know.
When moon, we're just on a constant slow trickle towards the moon.
Yeah.
At some point, maybe you never want to get to the moon. You just want to always be
striving
for it.
Yeah.
Did you ever mess around with like any other cryptocurrencies?
No, not really. I mean, when I started Luna, I didn't know enough about Bitcoin, so I thought Ethereum was pretty interesting. I was like, it can like do smart contracts. That's cool. But I think the kind of cutoff point for me was actually an great article by Jimmy Song about like needing an oracle for smart contracts and the fact that a Ethereum smart contract is always going to have to trust some human element for a source of truth. And then like getting more into the monetary side of Bitcoin. So yeah, I really only looked at those two and made my way to Bitcoin pretty quickly.
Are you hopeful for Ethereum 2.0?
Sure. I wish them well, honestly. Good luck.
This is that's actually something I was talking about with Elikai off the record after our last when we recorded last
not
week.
Not that off the record now.
No, I mean we said we should have talked about it on it, but Ethereum 2.0. He made me aware of what's it called, the second system syndrome, basically referring to IBM in the 80s. They would try to remake their system from scratch, one of their systems, and it turned out just like never come into fruition because they were always speccing it out and new things were getting added, and they eventually just stopped working on it because it never launched and it was taking way too long. And
sounds about right.
Yeah, and that's I mean, I don't want to pick on Ethereum here, but that's I do not think ETH 2.0 will ever launch.
Yeah, no, me neither.
And that's just my thought. Just interjecting here with my bias. Yeah, it's crazy because there's so many different ways to approach this problem. At least it seems now, or that people are trying to approach it in different ways. Your mic's doing that. There you go, perfect. But that's one thing I wonder about a lot too. Like, how many more altcoin cycles and ICO bubbles are there going to be? Like, at what point is Bitcoin's liquidity and network effect just sort of trump any inclination to even launch a competitor?
Yeah, I don't know. I think about it as well. I think about, like, you know, when Bitcoin's gone to moon and we're kind of writing the history books, hopefully the history ebooks about it. Like, think about the first phase, which was like, okay, like the multi-coiner phase, and then the ICO phase, and now I don't know if it's just like my complete bias, but it feels like we're in like the maximalist phase. It does feel like
Everybody's a Bitcoin maximalist.
yeah, well, not a maximalist, but like it feels like the kind of rush for new coins and new ICOs, it feels like it's kind of dead. It's done. And I don't really see where we'd go from here. Are we going to go back to that? I kind of doubt it. I think the public has learned. People have learned about these, you know, maybe not so savory ICOs, and they've learned the hard way. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. The market can remain irrational far longer than we can remain solid,
Yeah.
so we'll see. Is Luno, this is just maybe like Luno, is that the moon? Is that why it's Luno?
Yeah, so I think it's quite sweet. I don't know if you've ever heard of the language Esperanto.
I have, yeah. It's a dead language, right? Or
Yeah, but it was intended to be a language written for everyone. So it was one like global language, and it's the word for moon in Esperanto.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, that's good. That's a big contention in the Bitcoin community is companies like Coinbase and blockchain that use something that's sort of tied to Bitcoin's
Oh yeah, like
technical
Sats
specs.
app and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. It's
Even like Lightning app, like it's like,
yeah. It's all pretty tricky. Having some audio malfunctions on Tales from the Crypt.
What's new?
What's new? Yeah. Yeah, I think in that regard it's hard, right? Like there's two issues in software engineering, and like one of the biggest one is naming things. So I tend to not be so hard on people. Like if you read even like the Sats app, they went through a whole bunch of iterations of names. But yeah, I understand the concern. Like I think this same concern sits with the Bitcoin Twitter handle, which is on a interesting journey now. And I'm kind of with the people who wish it didn't exist at all.
Yeah, they need to shut down the Bitcoin Twitter handle.
Yeah.
Who's ever running it.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, this episode's brought to you by the Sats app, so check it out.
Shout out.
Shout out Casa. No, it's fascinating because it's such a raw landscape right now, right? It is a true sort of dash for digital and mental real estate, right? And trying to position, and there's so many opportunities and so many ways in which you can try to build and profit off this stuff that presents a lot of opportunity, and it's interesting to see how people go about it, or at least they have gone about it over the last decade.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think it's something I really dig about Lightning is that it sort of opens up new models of business which weren't previously possible. Like sub-cent payments are incredible. Like the ability to pay absolutely tiny amounts. Like that was really like my big Lightning Network light bulb moment where I was like, I couldn't have done this any other way. I couldn't have made this payment to Satoshi's place by card, by cash, by anything, because like my country doesn't even print the 10-cent piece anymore because it's not worth the metal it's printed on.
So let's jump into this. Like, what use cases do you see being enabled beyond like Satoshi's place? Shout out Satoshi's place.
Yeah. So, I think that micropayments is a huge one. I think that it really addresses like really interesting use cases. Like people have been looking at Lightning-based streaming services where you pay per use instead of paying a monthly subscription. I think that people have great ideas about content delivery in general. So there's all sorts of ideas out there about like embedding content in Lightning invoice pre-images. So once you pay an invoice, the content is automatically released to you by the protocol and you have that text or you have that thing. I think that's pretty cool. And then from kind of a more business standpoint, I think that refunds is a big pain point that it addresses. So there's something called a HODL invoice, which is a releasable invoice implemented in L&D at the moment. So you can make a payment to someone, say you want to buy some shoes, you get the shoes and you decide to return them. They can actually just cancel that invoice. So release your payment back to you. You don't pay for it. You don't pay fees for the payment. And then you've sent the shoes back. So I think that's pretty cool as well.
How does that work? Is there like a time lock function that's
so it's an invoice with a really long time lock. You'd have to have like a 2-week limit on releasing that invoice. But within that limit, like I think that's a pretty reasonable refund period. So I think that solves, like, especially having worked a bit on our merchant solution, where people were constantly kind of struggling with refunds because you have to get the user to provide you with an address, you have to pay on-chain fees, there's all sorts of things like that. So I think that's a big pain point in Bitcoin payments and in payments in general that is addressed.
Yeah, then do you give them back the equal amount of Bitcoin or?
Yeah, you do. You just release it back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking about like the merchant problems you're dealing, like the questions that merchants have, like do I give them back an equal amount of Bitcoin or the USD or
at what price,
the
or,
rand value
sub the
time.
fee or don't sub the fee. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Fun problems to try to solve though. Yeah,
so much fun. It's like one of the fastest moving spaces and one of the most interesting sets of problems I've ever gotten to work on. Like, people ask, why do you want to work on Bitcoin and Lightning? People who aren't really Bitcoiners are like, oh, it's crazy, scary internet money. And then, you say to other engineers, it's peer-to-peer, it's distributed. It's like every trade-off that you can possibly find in an engineering textbook. It's every like difficult problem that you want to solve. You get it all. You get to work on everything. And that's so great that you can just find your space where you want to work and dig in.
Do you see more devs coming to this?
I hope so. I think that people like Chaincode are doing an amazing job getting people in, but I do think so. I think that, it's got a lot of sort of hook-ins for people. If you're interested in cryptography, if you're interested in distributed systems, take someone like Gleb, he was kind of looking at networks in general and then found his way to Bitcoin. So I think there's just so much that is interesting about Bitcoin that it will draw in a lot of devs.
Yeah. No, it's, I feel very fortunate having this podcast, this platform, and having been able to meet a lot of these devs and some of the smartest people. I mean, not even some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life are working on this product, on this project, on this problem, on this mission, whatever you want to call it. And it's like for somebody who's not technical at all, it's fascinating seeing how excited engineers get in particular about this, because I'm excited because I think it brings sound money and that's what draws me in. But like to see all the engineers get like jacked up about the big problems that they can solve is exciting. So do you feel very fortunate to be able to work on these big problems? Yeah,
what a blessing. What a space to be in. Like, as you say, like when the people of the caliber and intelligence of the core devs are spending their time working on this, like that's such a testament to the project and to Bitcoin itself. And it's just amazing to be able to work on it and to be able to be introduced to it with very few blockers, actually, which I think is really great. Like, people want more contributors. They want people to participate. And that's been a big part of the ride. Like, a project which is like so happy to help out and happy to have new people involved. Like, it's just amazing.
What would you recommend to somebody who's looking to get involved but maybe a little apprehensive, a little nervous?
I won't say don't be, because everyone's nervous, and I hate it when people tell me not to be nervous about things because you're already nervous. It doesn't help at all. But I'd say do a GitHub trawl. That's probably the best place to start. There's a lot of small things that people don't have time to get to. So a lot of the projects Bitcoin Core is really well tagged and Git. So you go and look at things like good first issue labels on GitHub, or, you know, beginner labels on GitHub, because if you are starting out, like, people will merge really small PRs if it's a first time contributor and it is like a small fix. Like, you know, if you've been contributing for years, don't really go and like fix typos in the code. No one's going to take the time to merge that. But when you're new, people will really respond to you. So just find one small thing and do it. That's what I did. I fixed like an RPC field in LND because I needed it for a project. And once you've done that, you kind of like, you've ripped the Band-Aid off and you've done it. The Slack and IRC channels, a great place to reach out to people. Yeah.
What was the RPC call that you fixed?
Oh, I needed like a field. I needed a field in a send payment thing for Lightning. And when the payments were failing, they weren't actually returning the payment hash. So you knew something failed, but you didn't know what. And we were like, oh, well, this is a bit of a problem if you're running a huge exchange with tons of sends. We're going to need to know whose payment has failed. So we just put that PR in.
Nice. Thank you.
You're welcome, Marty.
What do you do outside of Bitcoin?
Outside of Bitcoin, I'm actually a big sports fan. We've got a sport in South Africa called rugby, which is like really violent football.
I know what rugby is.
Okay. People don't know.
Rugby's pretty big over here.
Yeah.
My high school team had a rugby team.
Okay.
My high
cool.
school had a rugby team.
Yeah, so I participate pretty aggressively in a rugby fantasy league with my boyfriend and some friends. Proud to say I've smashed them twice out of 5 years. So yeah, running pretty well. And then outside of that, I live in a really beautiful city. Cape Town is chock-a-block with mountains and beaches, so try to spend as much time outside as I can. And then my favorite one is that I actually make wine.
Boss.
Yeah.
Big wine out here.
Yeah.
If you couldn't tell by the
by the stash. Yeah. So I've been doing it with my family since I was like 10. Haven't been drinking it since I was 10, but been making it, and it's a really nice like back to nature thing to do. We get the grapes in big crates and they arrive, and we hand destalk them and we hand crush them, and we go through the whole process. And at the end of the year, we've got beautiful bottles of wine. So that's been awesome for me.
What varietals do you work with?
So we make Cab and Chard.
Cab's my favorite.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating. My wife would love this if she was here right now. We're big wine snobs, if you will. But that seems like something very therapeutic. Like you said, getting back in touch with nature. We were actually just in Sonoma before we did the Bitcoin 2019 conference, and it's crazy just seeing how involved and how entrenched winemakers are with what they're doing and how passionate they are about it.
Yeah, it's great. It's like I remember someone described to me once, it's like having a kid and a science project at the same time, because you care so much about it, but it's very, very finicky. And like when we started out, I was really young, but we were like doing it in someone's garage, and there were like rats around, and like the first vintage tasted like petrol. Like my dad was the only person who drank it. Everyone else like, this is disgusting, and he was like, no, this is great, and like forced his way through it. So yeah, lots of really small things that can go very wrong, but yeah, it's been a great thing to be a part of.
I'm gonna have to order a couple cases.
Yeah, you're gonna have to come visit in Cape Town again.
That's true.
Yeah.
Are you afraid of the great whites in Cape Town, or?
I'm not, but like not for good reason. Like we have a big shark cage diving industry. So it's place called Gansbaai in Cape Town, or off the coast in Cape Town, and people used to go shark cage diving there a lot, and now that industry is kind of shutting down because the sharks aren't there anymore.
Oh, really?
Which kind of concerns me.
They moved up here.
Yeah, but they're kind of headed to warmer waters because the temperatures are changing a bit, so the sharks are kind of gone, which I'm good with. I like swimming, so I'm good with it, but it kind of sucks for the shark cage divers.
Yeah, we've actually had a lot of great white sightings here on the northeast coast in the U.S., like up in Nantucket and Cape Cod. There's a lot of great whites, I'm pretty sure. I surf, so Cape Town has always been on my list of places to get. Yeah. It's very windy down there too, right?
Yeah, it's crazy windy. Like I remember one Christmas, there's this old established bar called Rafiki's in the corner of one of the big streets, and over Christmas the rooftop blew off. Yeah,
really?
Bit of a dive bar, so like of course it happened to them, but it gets very windy.
Yeah, that's I do need to make a trip to South Africa. I'm just talking about this with Eric Voskel too. Like I don't travel enough. I think I've only been to like 5 other countries in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, South Africa's a good one to go to. It's beautiful. It's it's a far flight.
That's what I was gonna say. How long's the flight? Like 16 hours?
Oh, it's long. I mean, I took the scenic route here. I flew through Dubai, so it's a 32-hour journey for
Jesus.
me. But they now have direct flights from New York to Cape Town. I think it's 16, 17.
I can't believe you're going back to Cape Town, then Israel, and back to Cape Town.
Yeah. me neither. Trust me.
You're gonna be able to survive that conference
Yeah.
without jet lag.
Yeah. No, it'll be good. It'll be good.
Is there anything else you want to touch on? We're like an hour in now. There's a lot we can go down here. Like what are you interested that we haven't touched on yet? Bitcoin related.
Bitcoin related.
It's okay. You don't have to answer.
Yeah.
We covered it all. We covered it all.
We're done.
Solved
We
all
solved
the
all the
world's
problems. Yeah. Yeah.
It's I guess like what would you say to anybody who may be thinking about doing a Chaincode residency next summer?
Do it. Oh my word. Don't be scared as well. Like I was so scared. I put the application in and I was like, oh, I'm never going to get this. And then we did the coding challenge and I submitted my coding challenge and Jonas got back to me and he was like, Carla, your solution doesn't like print out the answer. You sent us a bunch of like debugging logs as your solution. And I was like, oh my God, I've messed this up so badly. And then I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I kind of fixed it up a bit and sent it back. And when we got there, we were kind of chatting about the interview process. And almost every single person who got in kind of had one of those blunders or made that mistakes. And absolutely nobody thought they were going to get it. And here we all are. So
here you all are doing incredible things for Bitcoin. And it's crazy how fortunate we are to have companies like Chaincode, right? And now Square Crypto and Blockstream and others before them. And do you see this sort of model that Chaincode has shown to the world expanding more and more?
I hope so. I hope more people will put funding towards projects like what Chaincode's doing. But I just think it's a big kind of part of what they're trying to do with this residency. It's the first run of the longer form residency. And what they've done, which I think is so great, is that they've put all of the content that we covered up on the Chaincode Labs GitHub. So there's now a full Bitcoin syllabus, a full Lightning syllabus with links. And then every seminar that we attended is going up online. So even if companies don't manage to fund that kind of project, they're putting out those resources so that more people can use it. And I think that's just great.
Contributing to the feedback loop, the more people that know how to develop on it, the more people that can develop on it, the stronger that Bitcoin can be. So shout out to the Chaincodes of the world.
Yeah, shout out.
Carla, is that all we got?
Yeah, that's all we got. We don't have any whiskey, so I think that's all we got.
I'm sorry, I have to drive tonight. I was telling you, we would have been crushing whiskey if I didn't have to drive. But yeah, sorry for the New York City subway system. I know that's
sorry for the L.
Yeah, the L's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's only getting worse too, year by year.
Yeah.
Which is not a good sign. It's like sometimes in New York, I'm like, God damn it, I got to get out of this city. It's falling apart.
Yeah. Oh, at least there's public transport, right?
Yeah, that's true.
The alternative's pretty rough as well. We don't really have much at all by way of public transport, so it's a bit of a mess. We just got like people driving their cars, and then these like crazy, unsafe minibus taxis, which are like, you know, combi. I don't know if combi is a word that's American people know. It's like a van. A combi is like a car that can sort of like 3 rows in the back. But yeah, they've got these like old combis that like ramp the sidewalk and just drive mentally, and that's how a lot of the country gets around. So it's pretty much as bad as the L. But yeah,
I'm sure you meet some cool personalities on the combis.
Yeah.
Transportation. I wonder if you think that forces people not to move as much as they would have? Move around, travel?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say that like tourism in South Africa, so people don't really go to like far out places, and you don't really move, like, especially when you're growing up there. Like my mom made me break up with a boyfriend because he lived too far away and she was tired of driving me there.
My gosh.
No, not really. Shame.
Was he devastated?
I wasn't meant to be. It was too far. I was also over it. But yeah, so like you just have like much less freedom as a young person. Like you can only go anywhere if your parents drive you somewhere. I think Uber's changed that a lot because Uber is very affordable in South Africa. Like the minimum trip is $1.
Oh, damn.
And everything's pretty close. Like nothing in Cape Town's more than 35 minutes away. So that I think has changed a lot. But just like having access to that kind of transport when you're young, I think it really changes things for you.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the emergence of Uber changes economies in places with bad transportation. Apparently, they're losing like $3 on every Uber Eat. So
Still.
that's
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, Carla, thank you for coming through.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for working on Lightning and doing what you're doing and helping educate us here on Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me.
All right, enjoy the rest of your night. Peace and love, freaks. Take care.